I realized that like this morning. I was like, wow, YouTuber.
Yeah. So we're now audio is live.
Oh.
Just so you know.
Hello, web people.
Just so they know we're underway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working through your love.
Do you want to do kind of an intro thing and tell people where to come? Do you want to kind of do a Steve style intro and tell people where to call and all of that? It's like your extension.
I'm off Monday, Tuesday. Back to shifts.
You want to wait for him to come back? Or?
He's not coming today?
Yeah. Or not Steve.
Oh, Mikkel, yes. Oh, merci.
Yeah.
Pardon? Nope. Oh, sorry. My desk phone. It should be the one.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, we went to the first meeting. Yeah, Brian. There's like a meeting about this. You were working. And so during the day. And we should look around like the website. Yeah, leave all the way to it. No, yes, the passwords. Yeah.
All right.
You want the elevators or the taxi elevators? I've got into the mainframe. Yeah. What they do is have bigger, seems like they do something.
No, like when he sees a movie. You have to use the mouse.
I guess we should wait for that.
Yeah.
You have to take it down.
Okay.
Steve yesterday was asking me photos as you were doing it. I'm sure you noticed. At one point, he was gonna put up a picture of Angela instead.
He did?
No, he said he was going to, but he was like he couldn't get it done fast enough.
Nice.
I'm sure you would have loved it.
I really would. But you know, it's so many pictures of him that he has shared, I have shared.
You go live.
It's, you know, it's fine. That's fine. Go ahead. You're giving them information early. You shouldn't tell them any of this stuff.
This is not new information. Mikkel should have shared.
Shots fired.
Oh.
Just kidding. So it takes about 22 hours to convert people. Okay. 24 downtime roughly, and then on top of that, when we get back in, we're gonna have for the entire meeting. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, to be out with the afternoon of the 21st, but we can't get it.
Yeah, we'll do it on the.
I like it. First day. Unleash it.
Yeah.
So we don't get panicked through 40 people. Because she'll tell her crew will tell our casuals, and everyone's gonna be like, what, we're gonna be down? I've already tweeted it.
They've added just enough of that monster magic to get you fired up.
Angela was gonna tell that.
All right.
We're gonna teach her.
Everybody.
right.
Everybody who uses it, we're gonna teach them.
Oh.
Yeah.
The next, it looks different, but it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is everybody's logged in and everything? Awesome.
Do I click demo organization?
Choose anyone in them.
Anyone?
Yeah. I think, right? Like the service provider.
Shelter A, shelter B demo.
Yep.
We'll get into that though.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just give a quick intro to the web folks and you guys. So the washrooms are located in between the elevators, basically. You do need a pass to swipe in and out, so just ask Angela, myself, or Deanna for a pass, and we'll make sure you guys can get in and out. We're going to take one break around halfway through this morning, and anybody on the web stuff can call us directly at extension 33014 at the city's line, which is 613-580-2424. And you can also email Kale, kale.brown@ottawa.ca if you have any questions, comments, anything like that you would like us to bring up to the presenter here. Just send them through either of those channels. If you also have any issues connecting, you can contact me as well. We're really excited that this is our last training. Angela's done a great job yesterday doing 2 of them, so I'm sure the 3rd one's going to be that much more exciting. Again, we're going to be giving you guys a little bit more detail on what the conversion is going to look like. Unfortunately, I'm not the one who actually does it on the IT end, but it will take about 24 hours all in all to do this conversion of what you guys are going to have to be doing a paper process. So just something to keep in mind moving forward. If you need to do any planning for that, it's a good time to start thinking about it. Of course, if you need support entering that paper data back into the system once it's live, you can contact us and we're happy to support however we can. We will be using, during the breaks and stuff like that, a slide just to let you know when we're starting again. So if you have any questions, again, send them my way to the email or phone number listed. I think that's good. I'll pass it to you.
Awesome. I know most of you, but actually not all of you, oddly. So if we could go around and do some introductions, tell us, who you are, where you're from, what your role is, and if there's anything specific in HIFIS 4 that you want to make sure that I hit on, because we have an agenda and we're going to go through it, but it's very loose. So we can kind of jump around. If there's certain things that you want to touch on that I might not get to yet, we'll change it around. That's okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Angela Jones. I'm working here at the city as one of the HIFIS community coordinators. My work partner, Steve Bulgin, is invisible today, but he is around virtually. So I have had the opportunity to work both frontline as an actual HIFIS user for many years, as well as on the back end at the city as one of the coordinators. So for a long time. So I understand the balance that needs to kind of be struck with, actually providing service to your clients, but also capturing that really important information for your programs and for stats and billing and those kinds of things. So I'm going to try and focus on the things that I think are the essentials and skip over the stuff that maybe is not as urgent for you to use. So that's me. I will pass it over to you, my friend.
I'm Kurt. I am a frontline supervisor at the Ottawa Mission.
I'm Miranda, and I'm also a frontline supervisor at that.
Any HIFIS 4 things you want me to hit on or that you want to specifically learn about?
No.
All right.
Not yet. I'll probably have questions after.
Yes, excellent. Reports, awesome. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Our manager.
Yes. As you're wandering, fine woman.
I'm Chris. I'm new to Cornerstone. I'm the direct engagement worker. I've never used this, so.
Have you used HIFIS 3?
No. They showed it to me
Oh,
one
good. No, that's good. Awesome.
I'm Wendy, and I work for the Youth Services Bureau. I work for the Young Women's Emergency Shelter.
Awesome.
I was just going to introduce, because we do have quite a few people online. So we have Gina Leving and Lynn McMillan from the Family Shelter, Kim Rousseau from the YMCA, Mandy Boisvine from Cornerstone, Alyssa Max, Erin Poitsi, and Julia Deacon from Shepherds of Good Hope. And that's the only people that I know about.
Hello, YouTube friends.
And I'm Deanna. I'm the program coordinator for community and family shelters, and I'm mostly here in a supporting role, but
they're my co-stars or
yeah.
roadies, whichever you prefer.
We're the roadies.
Yeah. I'm not sure which. Okay, so number one, you're going to notice that you don't have any training paper documents in front of you, and that is purposeful, and it serves kind of two reasons. One, it's like 50 pages right now, and that's a lot of trees to kill for all of the peoples. But secondly, I think it's more important because if you had a step-by-step guide in front of you, you're going to ignore this beautiful magical face, and you're going to just pay attention to what's on there, or you're going to be like, bye, I'll see you later, thank you. And I want us to spend this time together. I know the whole 3 hours of computer training, I'd rather probably fill a pillowcase filled with turtles and, hit somebody with it than go through that. So I am sympathetic to the boringness that traditionally is computer training. We're going to try and keep it light and flowing. I'm going to try and get you here a little bit early. And like Deanna was saying, and Kale, that if you need a break before we're ready to have a break, no problem, step on out. My pass is sitting there on that desk if you need to grab it and walk out of the wing because you'll be locked out. If you have questions, or if you want me to go back to a thing, just kind of yell out, very casual, this is your session, and you too, YouTuber people, then we will try and get through all of the things as much as possible. So we're going to start, and sorry, going back to the kind of big giant 50 pages of delightfulness, you will receive this as soon as you kind of get back to work, or whether you're going to work today or later today or tomorrow, whenever you check your email, you will have this there for you. And there's going to be both a fulsome version that kind of includes those case management functions, as well as kind of a specific kind of scaled down front desk version where, if somebody's just booking people in, booking people out, adding some details, it's not 50 pages. It's only like 28. Woo! So you'll have those versions. I'll leave them actually in Microsoft Word documents, so you can go and make whatever changes you want. So if you want to go and change anytime it says service provider and put your own agency name in there, that's cool. So change whatever you need. So know that that is coming. And as we're kind of going through this together, I'm going to obviously go through some of the screens, and I want you to kind of do some, learning as we're going. Feel free to kind of click along with me or to try out different things. If you're noticing that there's some sort of weird glitch, or if your computer freezes or whatever, please kind of let us know right away so one of us can kind of come over and fix it. We had a couple of computers randomly freeze up yesterday, so be warned. So if you are already logged into here, because I know that the demo.hifis.ca website that we're playing around with, this is the demonstration version that's put up by ESDC, so Employment Skills Development Canada, who's created HIFIS. And they kind of wipe this out every couple of days. So if you were to add a new client today and you were to go play with it in another few days, chances are anything you created is going to be gone. So it will have all this information here, but we're going to actually change how we're logging in. So instead of plain old admin being the user, we're going to change that to admin Ottawa. So all one word, all lowercase, ADMIN Ottawa, like on my whiteboard thing here. So ADMIN OTT AWA, and same password. And you'll notice that you do have to pick a primary service provider, and it doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm going to pick shelter. I'm not picking anything, apparently. Look at that. I'm just picking shelter A just because why not? But you can pick anything that you like. So once you're in here, this is technically the welcome page. So things are going to look a little bit different than in HIFIS 3. So Chris, I know that I'm actually interested to get any feedback that you have, because if you have not generally used HIFIS 3, this looks very different, but hopefully everyone can still find the things that you need to find.
I have no options to select.
No up. Okay, if that happens, it might be that the screen was open too long. If you hit F5 on your keyboard, that will refresh the web page. And if you kind of retype your credentials, it should hopefully present you with options. So yeah, please let me know. Is everybody else in yet? No? I was like, I'm waiting for you. That's okay. Take your time. Refresh it again. Yep.
Oh, password's 1, 2, 3. Oh.
Stay tuned, web people. There's a microphone here. We're doing it was like, yes, there's a number of people who are doing a virtual version. There's a 15-second delay, and Deanna will beep you.
To be fair, she did say that we were on YouTube, and she said, "Hello, people of YouTube."
No, I heard that part. I thought it was being funny.
I am being funny.
But I've known her many years. So
have you heard me before with my might be potty mouth?
Yeah.
I'm really trying to go with the, oh my goodness, and holy moly.
Holy crow, guys.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So Angela, we have a couple of people who are having trouble logging on virtually.
All right.
This, she's still like,
Okay.
exited.
If you're having issues logging in, if you are able to go and clear out your history or clear the cookies from your cache, if you're not sure where to do that, from the top right corner of your Google Chrome where it kind of shows ... you can go to the history. And once that comes up, hopefully people can see that, oops, I can technically clear, whoops, where'd my mouse go? We have two different screens that keeps going back and forth. There we go. So if you go and click on the browsing data, clear browsing data option on the left-hand side, you can choose to just say, you don't clear out the whole browsing history, but you can clear out the cookies and other site data and the cached images and files. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. Like, oops. And now I need to actually go back in.
Seems to be locking the account. Does you have a lock?
Oh, I will go and unlock it. 1 second. So this is actually a great thing to talk about. So if as you're logging in, if you make 5 incorrect login attempts, it will lock your account. And I know that right now with HIFIS 3, when you're often logging in to Citrix, that can happen, or to VPN that can happen. And the standard is to wait just 15 minutes and try again. With HIFIS 4, if your account locks, you need to email myself and or Steve, and we will need to unlock that for you. It takes like 5 seconds, but if you're stuck at 3 o'clock in the morning, we will not be unlocking your account at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully you have a coworker who can also log in. Like, oh.
I'm going to pull this go over.
Yes, please. It won't go over. I know computers good.
Exactly.
Please stay tuned, web people, again. Thank you.
At least they can watch.
Excellent. Okay. So give me 1 second. I actually have to log in as the plain old admin account. And
Three in the morning.
I believe, yeah, there's, but that was always.
all right. One, two, three, four, five, six. Okay. I got in. Hopefully you can too.
Oh, okay.
10 more seconds, people. If anybody has any funny jokes, you can send them by email to Kale, or you can text me at 613-266-5717. Text me your funny jokes. Secret to you only. No one's paying attention here. We good? Excellent. All right. Okay. Back to the show. So everyone is now signed into HIFIS, so it looks obviously a little bit differently than the old HIFIS. Not as many colors. It's typical federal government webpage, which they are required, the ESDC folks, to make sure that any page that they're creating looks the same kind of design format as any other page. So if you went to, Canadian Revenue Agency, if you went to, Passport Canada, if you went to, look for employment insurance, whatever, you'll see things laid out in this kind of same template format. So, lots of drop-down menus with lots of options more on the left. So there's some things that you'll want to know just about navigating through HIFIS 4. Has anybody actually used HIFIS 4 before or checked it out before with the demo.hifis.ca? Mikkel, why aren't you raising your hand? Good. Then yay. I said yes. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. So in terms of some basic navigation that, will kind of apply regardless of which page you're on, we'll kind of start at the top, work our way down. So if you are French speaking and you prefer to use HIFIS in French, you would, just like in HIFIS 3, you're going to click on that Francais button at the very top of the screen, and it's going to change everything into French. I'm going to use everything in English because Francais. Yes. Exactly. The other two things that are up here, it says the active service provider, you'll hear me use the term service provider instead of shelter a lot. So that's just the term that they're using. So it'll show you your active service provider or active shelter, because I believe, actually Cornerstone does not, but the rest of y'all have more than one shelter in your agencies or shelter program. So, the mission has, life houses, stabilization, and hospice, and hostel, and Young Women's has, both the shelter and transitional programs. So it lets you work really with one service provider at a time. So if you need to enter information about a client for the other service provider, you would click on this, on the active service one, and you technically have to enter your password again and pick the other one, or whichever other one that you need to access. So just to be aware of that. And up in the right corner, the very top, it will show you just the name of the account that you're logged in on. The title of the HIFIS, or the kind of logo, is just, if you click it, it's really a quick way of kind of bringing you back to kind of that main welcome screen, regardless of which page that you're on. So you could be kind of way deep into the bowels of HIFIS, and if you just want to go back to the front page, that's how you can do that really quickly. The information that's in that gray area at the bottom, most of it is probably not relevant to your day-to-day work. You are welcome to read it should you be super bored or want to learn more about some of the technical stuff. The only thing that I would really say that is at least important to us here at the city, in the very bottom right corner, it says the build number and the date. So if there's ever any issues or any errors that you find in HIFIS, we obviously want to hear about them. And sometimes it's helpful to make sure that you're kind of sharing what build number it is. So when we're kind of connecting with the ESDC technical folks, we can make sure we're talking about the same version of HIFIS and that they haven't already fixed it. And also the date shows you when it was last updated. So any of you who've been using HIFIS 3 now also know that sometimes we upgrade the database. Sometimes it could be once a month. It could be once every 6 months. It's like at these weird random times that we happen to get a release, a new build released. And ESDC is now committed with HIFIS 4 to only do it twice a year. So they're going to do it in January and they're going to do it in May. And you'll at least be able to kind of see, when the last one was actually updated. And they're going to make sure that all the releases that are coming out, it doesn't just fix one thing and break 17 other things, but that it's actually a very stable build that includes lots of different feedback that we're able to give. So just, if you're giving us feedback, just be aware of the build. Any other stuff down here, it's really not relevant. So this main screen, it's technically defaulting to this bulletins page, which does technically exist in HIFIS 3. I don't think most agencies use it. I know the Salvation Army is very big on using it. It's kind of like internal memos for staff, or instead of using a logbook or writing notes to each other or whatever, it could be information that's attached to a client to be aware of, that please don't admit this person in the door because who knows what. Or it could be somebody's coming to fix the furnace at 2 o'clock. It could be any piece of information that you want staff to know. So as you can see, most pages that when you pick a certain module in HIFIS will show up in this kind of list format with these different columns. So you can sort any of the columns that you want. Yesterday I was thinking that these were little diamonds, but really it's supposed to be up and down arrows. So if you want to sort by subject, or if you want to sort by client name or start date, you can just click on whichever column that you want. In this right-hand action column, you're going to see, depending on the page that we're on, there's going to be different types of icons. And if you hover your mouse or kind of click on any icon anywhere in HIFIS, it's going to tell you more about what it does. So this little picture frame one will just display information. So and right now it's defaulting to showing 10 entries, but I can go and change that to, changing it to viewing 100 or 25 or whatever. And I can also filter items. So right now we only have 2 bulletins here on this welcome page. But if there was like 56, I might want to go and purposely search for ones that are only for my shelter or only for one particular client, and you can go and weed them out that way. The other pieces or drop-down menus that are up here, the front desk, just like in HIFIS 3, this is where you're going to spend most of your time anyway. So it has all the different modules that are available, and don't be alarmed, I'm not going to necessarily go through all of these ones all morning long. I'm going to, like I said, hit on the ones that I think are important. But if I skip one and you're really wanting me to kind of address or go into a certain one, let me know. So any of these options that have a little arrow next to them means that if you kind of click on them, they have more kind of options available to them. So if I were to click on assessments, it only technically gives me one option, SPDAT. There is technically another option called a VAT, like a VAT assessment tool, which is, well, it's comparable to the SPDAT. It's just one that we're not using in our community, so we've kind of taken that off of the display list. So if you're like, why are you having a list with one thing? That's stupid. That's why. So if you want to get to any of the modules, you would go to the front desk and click on those things. And any of the lists that show up here, and I'm just randomly going to click on admissions because it's the very top one, you'll notice, again, the lists that happen, they're all in the same columns. They're all laid out the same way. Sometimes there's tabs depending on where you're going. Sometimes there are not tabs. And any of the pages that you navigate to through the front desk is going to bring you to a list that will display all clients. So whether it's admissions or it's case management, this is all
clients who have been booked in, for example, or all clients who have received case management or have been housed or whatnot, as opposed to going to a client record specifically and looking at a list that would show only their records. So I see a little bit of confusion. We'll talk more about that as we go. Yeah.
We have a question. So are HIFIS admins the only ones who can post bulletins?
No. Someone asked if HIFIS admins are the only ones who can post bulletins, and no, anybody can post a bulletin. In that communications actually drop-down menu, good timing, there are 3 different communications options. So we have the bulletins, which is what we saw kind of at that welcome screen in HIFIS. It just kind of pops up to kind of show if there are any bulletins, basic information you need to know. And you can create one. You can't go and delete any of them, but you can create new ones or edit existing ones. You also have the option to do a broadcast message. So this is something we actually haven't decided here if that's going to be something that just Steve and I, as the coordinators, have access to. But it would essentially be almost like our emergency warning where you are sending out a message to every person who's logged into HIFIS, like at that moment, saying, I can't even think of a valid reason about, you know, oh my God, there's an earthquake, and I don't know. I don't know why we would do that. As coordinators, we might say, you know, please log off because it's time to do maintenance. That's the only thing I can think of on our end. So, but right now we have not turned that off, so anybody could technically go and broadcast a message to everybody who's logged in. The other option is this messaging, which is kind of like an internal email or instant messaging for people who are logged into HIFIS. So that actually is going to be really helpful because, for example, if, you know, I'm booked in, I'm a client, or, you know, I have a client who's technically booked in at SHEPS and they show up at the mission, then, you know, Miranda, you'd be able to email or send a message to somebody if they're logged in at SHEPS saying, you know, please log Deanna out because they're actually standing at my door and they're booking into our shelter. So you can call them, you can do whatever, but you can do this as well. So anybody can send a message, you can print it. It's just like an email box. Reports we're going to touch on later. Administration, although you won't have, because we're on a demo site right now, and this is not obviously the live data with, you know, your live user rights. Probably most of you in this room and the people who are joining us via YouTube will have some work or some options available to you within the administration menu. For example, client merge. All of the folks here need to be able to merge duplicate client records. You also may be interested in you wouldn't be able to necessarily go and add a new user or add a new drop-down item to one of the lookup tables, but you can go and look at the list or you can sort things properly. So you will have that available to you. And there will be actually 3 levels of kind of user rights, kind of at least as a standard. So we kind of have, you know, front desk folks who are really booking people in, booking people out, creating new clients, obviously, adding information. Then we have kind of the, you know, front desk folks, but really case manager. So they have all of those rights, plus any case management, any SPDAT assessments. And then we have our HIFIS site reps who have all of those things, and also the ability to kind of do different billing reports and change stay information and enter shelter contributions, those kinds of things. We can also kind of make one-off different things, because you can kind of say someone's a case manager, but, you know, they do billing on the rare occasion if, you know, whoever does billing goes away on vacation. So we need them to kind of have some custom rights. So you just let us know the name of the person and what kind of rights you want them to have. And Steve and I are still the ones who will set up new accounts. So it's, I guess the most important news is it's only one login now. So as opposed to currently when we have our little RSA key fobs and we have to log into VPN and we have to log into Citrix, and then here it's just one login. So we may be going around collecting all of the old RSA key fobs, or we may say, have yourself a little bonfire party or smash them up. I'm hoping it's that second option. I really am.
Outside of the shelter walls, please.
Yeah. Yes, not in the shelter. Safety first. Safety first. So although it is web-based and the intention is you're able to kind of use that wherever, even on your phone, you can use it on a tablet, some sort of mobile device. But everything right now as it stands is going to be locked down to IP addresses associated with your agency that has been approved. So if you are technically working from home and you log into your agency through kind of a VPN, a virtual private network, then your IP address is technically your workplace. So that's okay. But we would not be able to have somebody who's, a staff person who goes to their own personal home computer on the weekend for funsies, because everyone loves to do HIFIS on the weekend. I'm shaking my head, web people. No. And so you wouldn't be able to go and just log in from any random computer. It needs to be an approved address associated with your workplace. So same thing, phones, whatever, everything will need to be attached to however you're connecting to the internet. So just in terms of user accounts, there's lots more options and only one login, which I cannot tell you how excited I am. Yes. And also it's going to help with the speed. So if anybody has noticed that, there are times where HIFIS 3, it's kind of a little laggy. It's certainly because, you kind of look at our current system where there's only so many licenses that are available. So only so many seats that are available at a table. And if all the table is filled, service is going to slow down and other people won't be able to get on. And anyway, this, not the same. And I am a social worker who pretends to know things about computers. So I'm using analogies that Steve has shared with me. So if you have more technical questions, we will pass those on to Steve. All right, getting back on track. In this help menu, regular kind of help stuff, the My Account. So the very first time that you log in, you're going to have your same username that you have right now. That will not change. And everyone's default password, kind of like this morning, 123456. So, shh. Well, not shush. So the first time that you log in, you will be asked to change it to something else right away. I cannot replicate that screen for you because we have logged in and verified that that's who we are communally. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to have a uppercase, lowercase, symbol, firstborn child, eye color, whatever. And we have it set that the passwords are technically good for, I think, 1 year. So at that 1 year mark, you can go and change it to something else, and then 2 minutes later, change it back to that original thing, and that is okay. Here, for example, at the city, we're required to change our password every 90 days. It has to include like 4 of those crazy criterias, and we can't use the same password within 10 times. So we like to be subversive with HIFIS and be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ha! So don't try and hack me because chances are that's still my password. Just saying it. But you can change your password at any time. Also, sorry, when you log in for the first time, it's going to ask you for kind of a memorable phrase. So if you do forget your password, then it's going to ask you for what's your phrase. It can be anything. And you can either have it email you directly if your email is listed in your contact information, or it will at least give you a reset link so you can do it yourself. You don't have to contact Steve or I to have your HIFIS password reset. It's all on you. So just remember what your phrase is, or you won't be able to. So you can change, like I said, at any time, though, you can go and change your password. Oh, and the only requirement's 6 characters. Easy peasy. Okay. Oh, also, any field that has one of those red stars next to it means it's a mandatory field. So if you don't enter something into it, it's not going to let you save. And the most important field, or the biggest change that I've found from HIFIS 3 is this client search thing up in the top corner. So instead of having to kind of go from HIFIS 3, you'd have to go into front desk, you'd have to go into reception, and that's where you'd search for a client. You can still do that through the front desk and go into the clients, or you can just start typing here. So as long as you type in 3 characters, it's going to bring you back anybody who matches those particular pieces. Hold on. So I typed in Smith. It's going to give me anybody with Smith as the last name, Smith as the first name, the middle name. It's going to give me Smithson. It's going to give me Mick Smith. It's going to get anything with the letters that I have entered. So that's kind of a quick way to the client list that's drilled down to what I have searched for. And the same way, I can also get to that clients page by just going to the front desk to clients, same thing. You'll notice when you get to this client list page that it has options to view only, well, all of the clients who are in the entire database or that you have viewing rights to, only the active clients, inactive, or deceased clients. So for example, you'll notice that if somebody has a record and is deceased, that it will have their status in brackets next to their name. In that action column, there's a couple of different icons that are here. Again, if you hover over them, it's going to tell you what they do. So the house icon for any of these people is essentially going to admissions, so to either book them in or out. If there's an exclamation point icon, it means they have a service restriction, which we're using now instead of the term barred or temporarily denied access or ineligible or whatever you want to call it. But HIFIS used to call it barred, and I never liked that term. I thought it was very harsh. So now it's all service restriction. So that's how you would know it there. If they have some sort of active watch concern, whether it's a health issue or a behavioral thing or something an incident that's happened, you will see it through this eyeball icon, which says that the client has an active watch concern. And if they have a bulletin associated with their name, it'll look like a little, I guess it looks like a list or a piece of paper or something. So again, those icons in that action column are going to change depending on who you're looking for. So if I know that a client already exists in here, the best way or the quickest way is to look for them in that client search field. And again, that is available regardless of which page you're on in HIFIS. It's always available. So you can go and quickly jump to that, and it will bring you to that client record. Oops. So to look at, instead of just looking at their admissions in the action column, if I actually go and click on the person's name, the very first time that I actually go and click on a potentially unfamiliar client's name, it's going to pop up with this little screen that says attestation. And it's really just a way of kind of checking in about, you must attest that you are serving this client. So it's not that you're looking for your neighbor's name who you know stayed in the shelter 4 years ago, or you're checking up on a client that you worked with like many years ago who was in the news or something like that. That client is actually present at your agency, or you are working with them in a certain capacity. It's not going to stop you from moving ahead and viewing their information if you're like, yeah, I'm totally working with them, and maybe you're not. But it's really just a kind of check-in. So if we went back to that client next time, it's not going to show that screen anymore. So this is the kind of giantness that is the client profile. So it's really two parts of it. So that kind of almost column that's on the left-hand side here is, I'm calling this kind of the control panel of sorts, because there's lots of different options, as opposed to the right-hand side, which has these different tabs that shows the content. So there's different tabs here. So if I were to create a new client, I would have to go and enter this information. Actually, I'm going to go back and I'm going to be doing a lot of like, hold on, I need to step back. And this is one of those moments. So one other thing I forgot to pass on about that client search field. So if I want to just see a list of all clients, I don't have to type anything in there. I could just put my mouse cursor in the client search field and hit the enter button or the search button. And that's another quick way of getting you to the client list.
Question. Is there a visual bed list?
There is. We will get there. Stay tuned. So if I leave search field blank and just hit enter, it brings you to that client list with every single client in here. Right now, this particular demo database has 285 clients, and ours has like 70,000 unique clients. So it might take an extra second or two for it to populate. So don't panic if it doesn't load as fast as this.
Another question, so does the attestation pop up anytime you open a client?
No, it's only the first time that you work with a client. Okay. So if you need to create a brand new client, we'll actually start with that. Click on the Add Client button. So the one thing, some of you who were at the meeting that we had last week or the week before, time is getting away from me, we had talked about consent. So you'll notice that the first mandatory field that you need to fill out is a consent type. So we know that anytime that a client goes to stay at any of your agencies, that they sign one of those shelter resident consent forms, whether it's every single time or once a month or whatever it is that your agency dictates that they sign it. But it's kind of the one from the city saying that we're going to be entering their information into HIFIS. We're going to be possibly sharing their information with Ontario Works in order to determine their eligibility for billing, and with other shelter agencies who are part of our communal coordinated system. So we are actually in the midst of trying to combine that regular consent with the separate SPDAC consent as well, which right now is a separate one. So when they're doing that assessment on the client, they usually sign a second one. So now we're trying to just lump everything into one consent. And really so this whole consent piece is really asking for which type. You're going to see right now that there's 5 options, when in our live version, we're only going to have 3 options. So explicit really means, a client has signed a form physically in front of your face as they're at intake. The option for, that they have declined, that they prefer that their information or more information will not be entered. We still have to enter like bare bones stuff, but we would not enter other information. And we'll also have the inherited option. So that it really refers to if you are serving anyone who's under the age of 16 who technically legally cannot consent for themselves. It would be if a parent or a guardian or children's aid support worker or children's aid society worker, if someone else gives consent on their behalf, you would pick inherited. So right now I'm just going to pick that it's an explicit consent. It automatically will populate today as that start date. You can change it if it's not. You don't have to enter an end date, or you can go and enter a year from now, whichever. And you also have the option now to attach a scanned copy of it. So if you really want to scan a copy of that consent, so you only have to do it once for the whole year, and it saves other people lots of trees, because I hate killing trees. This will be a theme. You'll know it. Anyway, you can go and attach a copy of that if you want. So aside from that, I'm not actually going to attach a copy. I am going to go and enter, pretend I'm making a client. And again, those red fields are mandatory. So as I'm typing, anybody who's used HIFIS 3 will know that usually when you're creating a new client, you're entering their first name, last name, date of birth, gender, and then it's asking you to go and search to make sure that they're not a duplicate. So we don't actually have to do that step anymore, because as you're typing a person's name, it's going to start kind of scrolling on that right-hand side. And if there is actually anybody who might match the names that you're putting in here, I'm trying to find names that might match. Cool. All right. So if for some reason it starts displaying names on the side, it really gives you a quick option to say, I did not mean to go and create a brand new client. I actually meant to go and select this other client who already exists. So if you clicked on them, you could go ahead and book them in or add more information, whatever it is that you need. But I'm going to ignore that and continue to create my person. And I'm pretty sure all of you know the date of birth of the clients that you're working with. Is this true? Like you don't ever come in and people don't give you their date of birth? Or I'm not saying it exactly. I'm not saying that it has to be true either, but
give a date.
Yes, okay. So, all right. So in that case, that date of birth kind of toggle field will automatically default to yes, you know their date of birth. So you would not have to change it in that case. So yes, if you know their date of birth, you would go and enter it here, and you can either enter it manually, year, month, day, or you can go and select it with the calendar tool, whatever you want. But if you didn't know their date of birth, you would switch that to no, and you just say, they say that they're 18, or they say that they're 58, whatever. But if you generally happen to know their date of birth, or at least if they provide one to you, then just leave that kind of at the defaulted yes. The information verified, we're hoping it's a new field, and we're hoping that it will be used really only when you actually physically see someone's identification, or they actually confirm that this is the for sure spelling of their name, and it's MacDonald, not McDonald, it's whatever. So if you have actually seen ID, or you feel that they have verified that that information is correct, then it would be helpful to go and say, yes, it's verified. So that way, if other shelter provides service to that client, and they have a slightly different birth date or whatever, you'll know that you're the right one and they are the wrong one. And you can sing the I was right song, which I'll teach you later. Yes, Mikkel has a question.
The verified piece, I know you can go back and do reports to see who did what when, kind of deal, right?
For the web folks, he's asking if there's an option to be able to go back and see what log stuff that users have done in HIFIS, if that's possible, if there's a report. And yes, there is an audit log. So it tracks every click of every user every time you're in HIFIS. So we would be able to go and see which files you touched, did you book them in, did you add information, et cetera, et cetera.
Verification is my
That's
question,
right.
I guess.
Yes.
So we could find that out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The other, again, going down the mandatory fields, the gender is their self-identified gender, of course. So you'll see that there's obviously some other options in here. There's toggle fields for do they have a disability or a medical alert. There's also the option to turn a client either from regular, plain old visible or hidden. So it's very, very rare that we would have to designate a client's file as being hidden. In the 12 years that I've been here, I think we've done it maybe like 2 or 3 times tops. And I'm trying to think of, I know that at one point, I think we actually had a shelter staff who was fleeing an abusive partner who did not want their name in HIFIS for other people to see. And I think another situation where there was, a family who was kind of together, and, their cousin or somebody worked at a shelter who could have found their name. So if there's a concern about, safety, or somebody finding their name where they feel very uncomfortable or unsafe, you could technically go and change their visibility to hidden, in which case it would only be kind of their caseworker and any of the HIFIS administrators who would be able to see their file. So if you printed a report, it would still show up as, here's a person, but you would not be able to see their name or any details of their name. You can't search for their name. So I'm just actually going to leave this person as visible for now. Same as HIFIS 3 in terms of other mandatory fields about if they are a veteran, their citizenship immigration status, their indigenous status, the geographical region. So really what area was the client or the family coming from before they came to the shelter. This file number, we are going to kind of gray that out in our live version because we don't have kind of a centralized HIFIS shelter file number for clients. And country of birth, regardless, actually, if I pick Canada or I pick another one, it's going to then pop up with what province, what city. We have a question.
When would you use the medical alert?
Question is, when would we use the medical alert? So if they have a medical alert bracelet or a necklace, or allergic to penicillin, so anytime where they would actually have a life-threatening allergy, and they may not actually have one of those bracelet things, but if there is a medical or health condition with or without the jewelry that everyone should be aware of, then I would consider that a medical alert. So that's just a yes or no thing, but you'd have to put more information in kind of like a health conditions or, you know, a comment.
So it's not just like any health condition that they say
No.
they have, it's just something.
No,
really
that's
critical.
like, you know, kind of a, do the paramedics need to be aware of this so they don't like make them more dead than, you know, that kind of thing? That's a terrible thing to say. Oh my goodness.
It's true though.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, if you were allergic to penicillin or if you were allergic to
Yeah.
some, you know, heart medication, you don't want them to give that to you at the hospital first thing.
EpiPen at the front desk.
Yes. EpiPen, exactly. Those kind of things. So after all of that, after you filled out all the information, you technically have a few different save options down below. I know that all of you are single person shelters. You don't work with families, so it makes things a little bit more simple, but you do have the option to just plain old save. You can save the information and automatically jump to kind of that book-in page where you can go ahead and book them into a bed or whatever. If you did work with families, you could then say save and then all of a sudden turn that person into a family head. So we're going to ignore that option, and I'm actually just going to click save for now, just because. When I do that, it brings me again to that client profile screen that we have kind of seen before. So with all those tabs that are up top here, on that right-hand kind of file content side, here's all the information that we just entered on this main page. So to kind of address as well Mikkel's earlier question about editing different pieces and who saw that and history, you'll see at the bottom of the page that I can go and edit any of their vitals, whether that be the spelling of their name, it could be adding new pieces of ID or changing some of those answers, but it also displays the vitals history. So right now in HIFIS 3, any file for any client, you can see who originally created the file and who is the most recent person to modify the file. So, you know, if, you know, Kurt went and created a file and I went and changed the spelling of their name, and then Wendy went and added, you know, fixed their date of birth or something afterwards, it's not going to show that I touched it. It's going to show that you created it, Kurt, and that Wendy edited it. So, but this display vitals history will kind of retain any of the changes that have been made. So you'll be able to see anytime someone has made a change over time, whether it's correct or not correct or whatever, just to kind of maintain that kind of integrated history. So that's at least a quick way, even without a report, to go and see who has done what.
Kim from the Y.
Hi, Kim from the Y.
Are there any major changes to creating a family?
Oh, yes. Sorry, my folks. I will get to that in 1 second, and I'm making a note of it. It's just because you're not here in person. That's right. You count too. All right, moving along in this client profiles piece, the contact information, it's really, again, contact information for the client. And depending on the option or the means of communication that you're selecting, it's going to ask you to enter different information down below. So because I've picked a phone or a phone number as the means of communication, it knows that I should be entering technically a 10-digit number, not letters or other weird symbols. Whereas if I were to go and pick, you know, an email, I mean, you can have numbers in it, you can have letters, but it will, you know, if I just try and type that, it's not going to let me save. I'm not going to actually save any of these right now, but you can add as many as you want and update that as you need. Physical appearance, just like in HIFIS 3, if you want to go and track person's, you know, height, their weight, their eye color, hair color, you can do that. You can also enter more than one distinguishing feature. So right now in HIFIS 3, you're allowed to pick one. So now you can pick more. And here is also where you can go and either edit or add a profile picture. Oh, look at that. Content failed to load. Oh, dear. I'm actually going to add a profile picture, which you can do whether it's from kind of a screen grab from a webcam, or if you want to upload something from a digital camera, or not at all, that's okay. If anybody watches the show, it's like people don't know who this person is. I'm not even telling you. It's like The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix. This is Titus. He's my spirit animal. So you can go and enter pictures, edit pictures. That technically exists in HIFIS 3 as it speaks. I don't think many people use it for lots of different reasons, but know that it is here and know that it is stored securely. Languages, the languages tab in this client's profile page has been a bit more streamlined. So in HIFIS 3 right now, it's kind of gotten messy how languages are dealt with. You have, does the client speak English or French? What is their primary language? What other languages do they actually speak? And we are actually getting lots of questions, even from the media and from council, from the province, whoever, about languages that people speak. And it's hard to kind of provide a report when there's so many different random chunks provided. So everything is just kind of streamlined. So if they speak 26 languages, you can go and enter 26 different ones. So what languages do they speak? You know, you would pick whichever one. And the service language really refers to not, you know, do you provide them service in this language or English or French? It's just if they could pick to have service provided to them in any language, which one is it going to be? So if I say yes, then I could technically go and change that there. But, you know, you can list that, yes, they speak English, yes, they speak French. So yes, I can provide service to them, but ideally they would prefer to receive it in whatever their primary language is. So it's only one place that we're storing languages now, much more simple. The comments tab, you're probably not going to use this. Most people don't in HIFIS 3 as it is. If there was something that, you know, was based on, like, it's not a bulletin, it's not a warning, it's not a service restriction. If there was something important that people just needed to know, you might put that in there. It might be the place where you kind of put that they have an EpiPen, or maybe they have a car, or there's something. Or make sure that you don't ever meet with this person in room 4 because they hate the number 4. I don't know. Who knows what? And the custom tables, this, I was like, oh, I actually, did you guys see this? How hip is Jason Abbott, who is one of the ESDC programmers for HIFIS? You will probably actually not have this custom tables tab as an option because it's usually extra information that we choose to create or capture outside of HIFIS. So because we're not doing that, that's probably not going to be there. So you're really only going to have kind of these 4 main tabs. Aside from that, though, on this left-hand side, I put a picture. Most people will not. That's fine. It's going to give you kind of a really quick snapshot of the important pieces of information. So it will tell you right away if their consent status is active. So if you do enter an end date for a consent, that doesn't mean that past that date you're not able to look at that client's information anymore. You will be. It's just going to kind of prompt you about, you know, did you get them to re-sign a consent, or, you know, has it carried over, or, you know, maybe you didn't do it this time, but it will continue to remind you until you say yes. So it's just a quick way of seeing if it's still active or if you need to get them to sign a new form. And it also says that their current stay status, they're not booked in anywhere right now, their gender, their date of birth, and if they're part of a family. So for the folks online, if you do need to attach somebody to a family, it is much easier. So you would create this first family head client, and these 2 menus up in this top left corner, client information has, again, they all have lots of different options, but these are pieces of information that you might want to add based only on the actual client. That doesn't have anything to do with the services you're providing. Whereas the client management one is all service related. So you would go and record information in here if you're providing, if they're staying, if you're providing case management, if there's housing placements, that kind of thing. But in terms of families, you would go to that client information because you want to do something in terms of a family status, and it's not related to any specific shelter. So when that client family screen pops up, again, kind of like in that vitals, you can kind of go and look at their history, because as we know, there's lots of times, even with the single shelter folks, where someone may have stayed many years ago with a family or with their parents or with a partner or whatnot, and now they're by themselves or who knows what. So even though they might be staying with you as a single independent human at the time, you'd be able to go and see what their history was and if they have been part of different families over time. But from here, this is where you'd have the opportunity to either start a new family and turn them into a family head, or join an existing family. So if I click Start a Family, just like in HIFIS 3, I can then go and either add a member, which is really picking in another existing client, or if they don't already exist, because maybe it was a baby who was born yesterday, then you can go and create and add a new member, and it'll automatically add them to the family. So you could then go and change what the relationship to the family head is, that kind of thing there. Let me know if you need more. And back to, whoops. The one thing that I will at least point out here, aside from all the different options for, again, you can upload a copy of their consent. You can change different contact information. You can add documents. In HIFIS 3, right at the very first tab in the client details was the space where you could go and enter their different ID numbers. So just to be aware that it's now a new module or a new tab within that client information menu. So you'll notice that simply by me uploading a document to, well, they call it a document. Because I uploaded a profile picture, it's automatically considered a document, and it will kind of be shown as a document all throughout HIFIS. But if I just want to go and add a piece of ID without any actual documents, it would be the same as in HIFIS 3. You're picking what type it is and entering the number. If you want to say what province or place that it's from, that's cool. You can add a scanned copy of it if you want. You don't have to. And save it. So you can add as many as you want. You can remove them if you know that it's expired or they don't have that anymore. And I think the idea of us kind of having scanned copies of ID, I think, could be really helpful for clients down the road, because lots of times if a client loses a piece of ID or gets stolen or something, at least you have something you could print out for them or provide them with. So that's kind of funky. So at least this is where you would enter ID, and the same thing if they have, if they do have a car, they do have an EpiPen, you'll want to go and add that as a health information piece in here. And case management stuff. So if I were to go and look, for example, at, this person isn't going to have anything, even admissions, so bookends. So the list that shows up here as opposed to the list that shows up from the front desk is based on the client. So this would only show the list of bookends or reservations for this one client.
Kim is asking if you click create and add a new member, if the person is already in HIFIS, will they pop up like when you're having
Yes. If you are accidentally say that you want to create a brand new family member instead of just adding a member that already exists, it should pop up just like when you're creating a brand new client on the side to say, are you sure it's not this other person that you want instead? It's not going to prevent you from creating a duplicate person, but at least it's hopefully going to cut down on the duplicateness, if that makes sense. Is there any questions so far about this stuff? I think we're actually going to take a break for 10 minutes. That includes for our web folks. So what time is it right now? It's 10:11. If the web folks and the people folks, the in-person folks, can be back at 10:25, that'd be great. There's Tim Hortons and cafeteria on the ground floor. Bring a pass with you. Get back in, grab one. Just,
Starbucks?
Oh,
Oh,
Tim Hortons. I want
okay.
Starbucks.
Starbucks coffee.
Does anybody want a coffee? Some
Thanks.
worms and
It was the one that I knocked before that was.
Thanks.
No comment.
This is like a vision test, eh?
Yeah.
Trying to do it.
Yeah.
Like this, when the, yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know what you're
So you're happy with
doing over there.
I'm done, yes.
What time did you say?
10:25.
So we can do restrictions then?
Hmm?
We can do restrictions for you for people? Okay. Definitely gonna be doing that.
I know that when your folks first started using it, I don't She's just gonna type it out.
You're unmuted.
Awesome.
Continue session.
Continue session. Welcome back. Was there a giant lineup at Tim Hortons?
Yeah.
For the people who are here? There are certain times a day where it's like there's nothing, and then everybody in the entire building decides to go to Tim Hortons all at once. And it's not the type of Tim Hortons where you can wander up to the counter and be like, what do I want right now? You better know your order. You got to have your money in your hand, and you got to get out of the way.
Can you order online? Can you order online?
Yep, you can.
Yeah, they do that at the hospital.
I was like, mobile ordering, it's the best. Someone on the web technically asked if you can add more than one email or phone number, and I think Deanna may have already typed out the answer, but yes, you can. All right. So another question that we had in person is about saving. So because most of these different modules, you kind of have this list page that kind of pops up. There's some different tabs. You'll notice there's not always a save button down below, which is what you're probably used to in HIFIS 3, and then you have to exit. So if I were to change any information, for example, there are many areas where you do have to add a, or click, sorry, on a save button. But, and once I enter information, I'm just gonna, if you look in the top right corner when I click save, you will see nothing. Nothing has happened. Look at that. Nothing happened. Oh, yes, something has happened. Thank you. So there is a green data saved little pop-up that will happen. And let's try and pick something that doesn't have a so there are some areas, just to at least show you that let me try talking again with caffeine from the start with full words. Any of the pages that have a save button below wherever you're entering information, pretty standard. You would click on the save icon, and you should absolutely see this green little message in the top right corner pop up with the little check mark saying data saved. If you don't see that, chances are it may not have saved. Or even worse, you can see a red message that will pop up with a big X saying data not saved, because there's a number of pages within HIFIS, and we will get to some of them, where it doesn't have a save icon specifically. It's just if you move away too fast or if you don't click save, it will not change that. And actually, I'm going to try and make it appear, and I haven't changed anything, and now I'm going somewhere else. And and it gives me nothing. I was hoping for a big red message here, but that is unfortunate. All that to say, look for the save button, or look for any time that you change information for that green data saved thing, because if you have not seen that message, there's a good chance that it has not been changed. And you don't want to just enter information for funsies. No one likes to do that. I have lost my place. So we're going to go and move on to, does anybody have questions about any of this particular profile stuff before we move on to like booking people in and whatnot? No? Web people? YouTubers? Oh. Oh, actually, I did miss something. So before we move on to that, from back to my, I'm going to find my client. That I made. Oh, there's a error message. So in terms of source of income, I know that there are certain shelters who regularly collect shelter contributions from their clients towards their stay, and some that don't. But it's important to be able to track what their source of income is so we can see if they have been connected with OW or ODSP or whoever. And it's also where you would end up tracking any shelter contributions if a client is paying any money at one point. So we'll start off with just the financial profile is where you would go to technically enter what the source of income. This page is very busy. It does a lot of different things. You'll see all the different tabs. You can enter what the client's income or multiple sources of income is. You can use it as almost an interactive budgeting tool if you wanted to sit down with them and say, you're moving out in a couple weeks, so let's kind of sit down and talk about your expenses and your assets and your debts. And as you fill out information, it would populate this beautiful little chart down below so they could see how much they're making versus how much they're spending. But what we think is at least most important, feel free to do all that stuff. Knock yourself out. But please, when you have a chance, go and add what their source of income is, even if it's no source of income. So at least we're aware. So for income type, if you were to go and select something that's tied to employment, there will be a few new fields that pop up. So, employment type, is it full-time, part-time, casual, whatever. You can select, an employer type, employer name, and you can enter the pay frequency. So it defaults to hourly. And if I were to go and change it to they get paid every 2 weeks, so bi-weekly, it's then going to change what they make every hour to, what they make every 2 weeks. You can also indicate if it's their primary source of income or maybe it's a secondary source. And anytime you're entering money in here, you don't have to enter the decimal point, so you'll have to enter the extra zeros. So for example, if I want to enter that they get paid $500, I have to technically type 50000. Oops, not that many zeros. And the decimal will kind of add itself. These options for shareable and editable, a client might share their source of income with you, and if you say that no, it's not shareable, that means only you, as the caseworker, will be able to see it. Not all the other shelters would be able to see it. And same thing, editable. Why can't I say that? Do you want this as kind of a record that is permanent, that will not change forever and ever and ever, or do you want the ability to go and change it as things change? So you can go and add multiple sources of income. It's going to kind of calculate what they might be making and whatnot. So just at least we know that that's not been something that people have filled out all the time, but we're hoping that it will get filled out more because, again, it's becoming more and more important because people have two goals, regardless of what their other issues are when they're staying in a shelter. Find a place to live, find a way to pay for that place to live. So this kind of at least helps us guide us with one of those informations pieces. Okay, so admissions. So if I want to book this one client in that I'm already on their profile, I can either go to the front desk and go to admissions, or I can just click on admissions. If they were part of a family, for the web family shelter folks, you could click go and book in family. It's going to opt to book in the entire family, or you can just book in the one single person. So it will automatically, if they were part of a family, you would actually see there would be an additional button up here saying, do you want to select any other family members? So maybe you want to book in only 3 out of the 5 family members, or only half of them, or everybody but one. And you just go through, just like in HIFIS 3, and fill out the fields that you need to fill out, remembering that the start date and time will default to the current date and time. So make sure you change that to when they actually arrived. I'm pretty sure we have grayed out the expected book out date in our kind of live version because we're shelters. We don't know when people are going to leave. But reason for service is mandatory, just like in regular HIFIS or HIFIS 3 right now. And the one difference here, for anybody who, sorry, we have a web question.
So the financial profile is to complete for head of household only?
No, for anybody who has any source of income. So if, a family had, a partner of the family had a part-time job, or anybody over the age, you wouldn't do it for a child, but if anybody over the age of 16 has any income, you would want to record that. That doesn't mean you have to then say, oh, well, this family makes, a ton of money, so they should be contributing or they shouldn't be staying in a shelter. It's not about that. It's really just about trying to determine how people are living out there and how they're making money. So we just want to be able to kind of record the actual sources. So great question. When you're booking in HIFIS 3 right now, most people, they just kind of book a client in, they pick a bed, that's it. But for any of you folks who have ever done billing, in order for a client to show up on the billing report that's sent to the city or Children's Aid or wherever every month, they need to have kind of a per diem program attached to their stay. So you're going to hear me now mention the word program, and that doesn't mean shelter program like hospice or stabilization or transitional or whatever. It means, is it like the city per diem program? Is it like what funding program is paying for that client's stay here? So we always had the ability to technically go in and apply kind of the per diem program manually in a separate section in HIFIS 3. But most people would kind of use this special tool that we created in HIFIS Plus, where they'd kind of click one button and it would just kind of give the program to anybody who stayed during the same time period. So we don't have that because now we have the option. It will be a mandatory field where you have to go and pick a particular, like which per diem program do you want to associate for this stay. In this particular case, we have a fake per diem program called Goldilocks, whatever. And we'll just call it that. Another new thing for their stay is evacuation assistance required. So it's, slightly different from the, do they have a medical alert or whatever. It's based on that particular stay, because maybe they regularly don't have any health conditions, but maybe this time they've broken their whole leg and they're in a wheelchair. So do they have require any assistance if the building needed to be evacuated? So you can toggle that yes or no. The rest of these fields down below here are optional in terms of where they've been referred from or referred by a particular worker, if they have a late pass or a wake up time, if they arrive for intake and they're under the influence of alcohol or drugs. If you have any specific comments to add about that particular booking. And then when I click next, this is where it kind of shows up. This is kind of right now it's a very, very giant version of kind of the graphical booking page that we're used to in HIFIS 3. So it will technically list all of the beds that are in your particular shelter or the active service provider that you have. The person that I'm trying to book in is still in this deck area up top. And from this kind of bed selection page, if I kind of just move my mouse over to the left, oops, it kind of brings up a control panel. So if you're not sure what some of the small icons mean in terms of the different bed colors or whatnot, you can see what they mean. You can also kind of narrow down because, again, the mission, like the hostel, has like over 200 beds as part of it. So maybe you only want to look for one specific client. So you can go and search for one client who might be already booked in, or because maybe you need to switch rooms. Maybe you want to, I was like, where did my mouse go? Oh, there we go. I'm back. Oh, we have two screens going on. Okay. Technical issues. 1 second. Okay, we're working there. Hi.
Lynn is asking if you can add a bed in a shelter.
Depends on your user rights. Yes. It's like, I don't know if the mouse battery has died. Oh, no, we're good. I saw it. We're good. Okay, sorry. To kind of go back to this. So, for example, this particular shelter that I picked has a bazillion rooms in it. And there's always going to be kind of this arrow in orange to scroll to the top. You can see someone's named their rooms in a way that I find very amusing. So if you only wanted to see just the available beds or just the overflow beds or whatnot, you can go and filter what you're seeing here. So the person that I'm trying to book in, again, I can use small icons or large icons. The large ones, again, if depending on the size of your shelter, you could be scrolling for years and years and years. So I recommend the small icons. If somebody is booked in, if you hover over that bed, it's going to tell you their name and when they booked in, their date of birth, that kind of thing. But the person that I'm trying to book in right now will show up in that deck area up top. If I click their name, it goes from blue to orange, so I know that I have selected them. And then I would just have to go and click on whatever bed I want to book them into. So once I click the bed, it should hopefully turn green saying, you're good, you assigned that person to a bed. And then I could save, oh, selected bed is in use. Oh, from that person, yes. Oh, I put them into this room. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Okay, yes, there we go. If I needed to move somebody from one bed to another bed, you're literally clicking and picking another bed for them to move to. And are you sure you want to move that client from that bed to that bed? Yes, I do. And then you can save. Get to be, oopsie doopsie. Like, I have a weird glitch happening. Like, ignore this. We have some fun things that we're still trying to work out. This demo site is a little sketchy.
Excuse me. Can we track who made that other profile named Kurt Veloscript? Can we
Yes.
audit that history?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, because my name's Kurt.
Yes, I'm aware.
Weird.
Unfortunately, Ottawa administrator has logged in, but I wonder who it could be. Someone loves you very, very much.
The physical appearance, so to make sure it's the right person.
Alias, millennials too.
Oh.
Did someone affirm that they were working with that client?
Attest?
Yeah.
We would have to ask that person, did they attest to working with that client? We could technically book that person in.
Yeah, I actually.
Oh, you are already booked in. Oh, nice. Excellent. Okay.
Just curious, thank you.
That's pretty awesome.
Did it verse 2000? Wow.
I was in Hamilton yesterday, so it makes sense.
Excellent. Oh my goodness. See, look at all the fun we're having in person, people.
Angela.
Yes.
Will the HIFIS reps be able to, like, will folks be able to create beds if they need to when they're
Not everyone, and this is going to be one of those things where, you know, in HIFIS 3.8 and with our current kind of structure, I can answer every dark cornered question and whatnot. There's still a few kind of process pieces and still a few little weird things with HIFIS 4 that we're still trying to iron out. So I can say that, yes, there will be people aside from just Steve and I who might have rights to create new beds or change the names of beds or whatnot within shelters. But it will not be everybody, and it's not even going to be just only site reps. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like, because if somebody starts adding beds, that technically adds to your shelter capacity, which impacts the number of shelter beds, I'm air quoting here, that, you know, is reported to the media, to the government, to, you know, city council, whoever, to anything. So we need to make sure that we're maintaining kind of each shelter has a certain amount of contracted beds. So we need to be able to make sure that the numbers in HIFIS reflect the numbers within their contracts. But, you know, for example, with our overflow motels that the family shelter system uses, because they're all overflow, and it's not like we know that we only use these 4 rooms at this one motel, that in those kind of instances, you know, we're regularly adding just random beds to a certain motel. So in those cases, I can say that yes, we will likely have other people aside from Steve and I who can definitely add beds to those kind of places, but we will have more information about that later. When I know, you will know. Yes. Okay, so if back to that kind of managing rooms and beds chunk, that's why I couldn't move my person there. It's like someone else moved someone to a bed before I did. Just saying. So that's actually a good thing to point out. So if you have more than one staff who is using HIFIS at the same time as you, on a different computer, you're kind of almost competing. So, you know, Mikkel and I, or somebody and I, were both trying to place a client in the same bed. So it's not going to stop me. It's going to let the first person who actually does that do whatever. So I might be confused as to, like, I just picked that bed. Why can't I pick that, put the client in there? And it just might be because someone has been entering other information literally at that moment. So if you're unsure, or if you think that someone else is entering stays at the same time you are, you might want to click the refresh occupancy button on that manage rooms and beds page, just to make sure it's as up to date as possible. So for any of the folks who will be able to add new beds or change the configuration, each room has a little gear or settings icon in their top corner. So in this, it would bring you to kind of a manage bed screen where I could go and technically add more beds. And I would just need to have, you know, what's the bed name? You know, I want to add 5 beds. So now it's going to start from 1 and it's going to go to 10, whatever. I am going to cancel out of this. And back. Oh, here we go. So if you need to move people around, again, just like in regular HIFIS, clicking where you want to put them. It will not be as cumbersome looking as this right now because none of your shelters have rooms that are that giant and that size. Deanna, web question?
Web question. And she's asking if you change the spelling of a created profile, and if you're already checked in, can you change personal information?
Yes. For clients, if you need to change the spelling of their name or their date of birth, you just go back to that person's profile. I'm going to use my HIFIS. Sorry, Kurt spelled wrongly with your wrong last name. So if I need to go and edit information about the client, I would just find them, whether it's through that client search or through the front desk. And to edit their information, it's just literally on that very first tab, editing vitals. So it gives me the chance to go and change the spelling of their name or their date of birth or all those things. And you can do that whether they're currently staying or they moved out last week, whenever. All right. Okay, so book somebody in, booking people out, also super easy. So if I went to the admissions page to see, and again, this will have, there's 3 tabs. We're probably actually going in our regular live version, not this demo version. That reservations tab will probably be gone because even though we all have the potential to technically go and log that we're holding a bed for like 2 hours or whatever, it's probably more work than it's worth to use reservations within HIFIS. So we're just going to axe that module completely. So you'll likely only have the booked in tab and the bed availability tab. So if you want to book somebody out, you're just clicking on, you know, you're finding their name in here, and I'm clicking the, I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but it's a book out button. And just like in HIFIS 3, it's going to default to the current date and time. So make sure you change that to when they actually left, and you're picking whatever reason for discharge, if they've been referred to a certain place, and, you know, any comment. So for example, if I picked that they were admitted to a hospital, I may want to put that, you know, they actually went to the civic hospital as opposed to the general or whatever. You don't have to enter anything in there if you don't want to. And as soon as I click book out, it will process for 2 seconds. And data saved, yay! So now they're out of there. But while we're here, the bed availability button, this is actually another area where I'm not 100% sure about the process that we've decided to work out. about using this or not. So as this stands, what you're looking at is you would be looking at a list of all of our combined shelters. So whether you have technical rights to them or not, you can't go and book people in or out of other shelters. You can't necessarily go and see what bed somebody is in. But from this bed availability page, I could go and say that, oh, demo organization has 51 available beds. So I probably shouldn't bother pulling out mats and, having people sleep on the floor in the chapel when I know that there are beds elsewhere. Some people look alarmed in person. You may be alarmed online on YouTube. Don't be alarmed. So if, and that doesn't mean that it's also live or that it's up to date to the minute, because we know that a lot of people are entering information in real time, and some people, it takes them hours to kind of get things entered. But it at least could provide you at least a quick glimpse of, is there any other capacity out there instead of you going into extra overflow where someone else could stay in a real bed and receive service even temporarily, and you'd still have to call them or contact them and whatnot. But if people object to this very strongly, obviously our ears are wide open, but I think that this could be a very useful tool. And if your alarmedness is like, I'm not feeling it, then people are feeling it here in person, by the way, YouTube. By the way. And also, if you're really, really bored, especially on the overnight, you could sit here and refresh. So right now, there might only be, 6 beds available technically at this one agency. And as things are changing, you could get new information. You could entertain yourself for hours. Client service be darned. Darned. Yes. Question in person.
The occupancy rate, is that just going to be for the actual shelter beds, or is that including stabilization hospice?
Someone just asked about if the occupancy rate on this bed availability tab includes some of the non-standard programs. So the answer is that all of your sub-programs, including stabilization and hospice, they will all be listed separately. So even though people just can't say, oh, I see hospice has 3 beds available, I can totally go there, because there's certain criteria for accessing a number of different programs at all of your different agencies. Just because there are beds available that it would show does not mean that it's A, available, B, appropriate. But it would show you what, if you had 10 beds and only 7 are filled, it's going to show you at 70% capacity at the time. And, there might be a client kind of out there who would fit, for example, the hospice criteria, but it's not like they're just going to say, go there in an hour, you'd be good. That, you would still have to follow regular intake processes, but they would all be listed separately, if that answers your question.
So on this list, just using the mission as an example, it would be Blackberry Hostel, Blackberry Hospice, Blackberry Stabilization, so that we're not getting calls being like, hey, you have 7 beds available, and explain to 85 staff.
Yes. So someone just asked just wanted to make sure that they were clarifying that for their particular agency, that all of their actual shelter sub-programs would be listed separately. So, instead of Blackberry, it would say Ottawa Mission Hostel. Instead of Crash Test, it would be Ottawa Mission Day Program. Instead of Demo Organization, be Ottawa Mission Stabilization, et cetera, et cetera. Fill in your agency and your programs accordingly. But yes, they would all be listed separately. You could see them. And again, the big caveat about just because it's showing beds doesn't mean that A, that's the case, or B, it's available or appropriate. But I think that it's kind of a cool, quick little view so you can kind of see, because I know that sometimes, there are different times of year, different shelters at a certain time where people would rather go to shelter A than shelter B. But if shelter B has a lot of beds available and shelter A is putting people in every single corner, then why would they not want to sleep in an actual bed? Just saying. So anyway, this is here. So if you have any strong feelings about it one way or the other, we'd like to hear it. So that is that. So booking people in and out. For the family shelter folks online, just a note, as of this moment, you technically need to book out family members separately. So you can book them in as one unit as a family, all the different members, or 3 out of 5 members of the family, but you will need to book each family member out separately, because we're seeing lots of trends where lots of families are not necessarily leaving at the same time. For example, if a child is staying with a family throughout the week, and maybe they, have joint visitation with, another parent, or they're in foster care, they decide to go and stay with their grandmother, then there's been lots of kind of in and out. So they're trying to not make the assumption that everyone comes and goes at the same time. So they're, again, in the job aid document that you will receive after, it will have lots and lots of details about the family stuff. Cool. Questions? Other questions about the booking in, booking out? No? Oh, I should probably show you about where to enter if you do have any shelter contributions. So if a client is staying with you and they pay money for their stay, you would go, again, you can find the client either through the client search to go to their particular admission record, or you can go just to their admissions page and find their name, and you're editing their stay technically, which you can kind of lock down as to who you are or what fields you're able to enter. And when I click on this edit stay, I'm not actually changing any details of the stay that I've entered, but it just gives me access to this programs button up in the top right corner. So when I booked this person in, or when whoever booked this person in, they were automatically assigned a particular program. And you'll notice that now that there's 3 icons that are in that action column. So the money one that says that I can enter a payment, or I can edit the whole program, or I can delete the program. So for their current stay, I want to go and add that they have paid money towards their stay. There's none in the list that shows here. That's okay. I'm going to add one. And it's just asking, what method are they giving it to you? What's the payment date? Similarly to any other dollar amount, I actually have to go and enter extra zeros to make sure the decimal is entered appropriately. If you have provided the client with a receipt, make sure that you're tracking the number. And in the comments, it's not mandatory, but most people would put something like it's their rent money for November 2018 or something like that. There's also the payment period option, because just because they're giving money to you today doesn't mean it's necessarily for today or for this month. So you could go and technically say it was actually for last month, and the money should be applied to their stay for that period of time. And you would get to see every time that they have added a payment, it would show up here, and thusly show up on the billing report. We have a web question.
We have 2 web questions.
Ooh, 2.
One, can the option be added to book out?
I will get back to you on that.
And the second question is from Kim at the Y. She's asking, is there a visual bed list we could include that shows where the clients are located? HIFIS currently has a selection where you can click and it'll show us the shelter map.
That technically is that. I will, if you went to the admissions, just kind of going back to the front desk admissions, if you want to see the rooms and beds, kind of like in HIFIS 3, you would click on, at the bottom of that list, the manage rooms and beds. It brings up the ugly thing. You can turn it into a small icon so it's not so scary looking. And again, knowing that this demo that you are looking at on the screen is not going to, it's much more bulky than it would be in our live one, because your rooms tend to be smaller. They don't have 23 beds in each room, or it will be much more manageable. But this is where you can go and either see a visual list of, or visual queue of where they're at, or there's also a bed list report, if that is what the person is referring to. Hope that answers the question. All right. I'm going to move on to how many of you do SPDATs? Hooray. You guys don't SPDAT?
Yeah, but I don't.
I was like,
Yes.
haha, nice. I was like, I'm surprised. Oops. All right. Okay. Okay, so get to the SPDAT page, it's just through the front desk and the assessments. So when I get to this particular list, again, I think I forgot to point out a couple of things. So most list pages or many list pages have actually a couple of different icons. I want to pick one that has two different ones. So a lot of them will either have just the information one or the question mark one too on any list anywhere in HIFIS. So the I get help icon, it really brings up a really quick little view of what the heck this particular module does within HIFIS. And then you could also quickly navigate to a step-by-step list of how to do a thing. So you could go there if you just want more information about what this whole section, any particular section does. Or many of the pages also have this option to enable field descriptions, which I don't think it's going to work on here so much. And it would at least tell you what a client, hold on, we'll do that on, here it is. Oh, that's my thing got changed. There we go. So in here, if I were to click on that enable field descriptions, you'll notice that a lot of the categories or the fields have now this question mark next to them. So if I want to see exactly what HIFIS is expecting me to enter in any particular field, I can click on that question mark next to it. None of it is going to be surprising. You'll be like, oh, yes, an approximate age. The individual's approximate age. Imagine. Their province of birth indicates which province or territory they were born. Yes, thank you. But no, at least it's there. If there's anything that you come across that's a little questionable, that is always an option. But back to what I was doing before. So in the SPDAT list, there's that get help question. And there's the two main tabs for the VI SPDAT, which is the initial pre-screening triage tool, and then the full-blown SPDAT. So you can filter the list that is displayed to say, I want to see all the SPDATs or VIs, whatever, that have been done since the beginning of time, or only the ones that are done in the last month or 3 months or whatever. And depending on which tab you are selected on, you can then go and add a particular assessment depending on the clientele that you're working with. So whether it's an adult or a family or a youth. And it has the most updated version. So you'll see it has adult V4, family V2. So hiding in the background is the older versions as well, but we have turned those off because we expect people to use the current tool moving forward. Kale, is there a question?
Yeah, are we still able to print reports from
You will eventually be able to print reports about case management. They will not be there initially. And I'm going to ask that person to kind of hold that thought for a few minutes. When we get to the reports very, very soon, I'm going to explain a little bit more. Suspense. So I'm only going to look at the SPDAT stuff and the VI SPDAT stuff super quick because it's almost just like if you've used it in HIFIS 3, it's almost the same. And it looks almost exactly like the paperwork. So it's laid out the same. You're entering, some mandatory information in here. This is the full SPDAT assessment. The cool thing, kind of like when you were, booking in a client, that room management page, if you scroll over to the left, it will give you a progress panel. So it'll just at least kind of keep you updated as to how many questions you have answered. If you hover over any of the score numbers, it's going to give you the description of what it actually means, that particular score. So if I just start randomly, oh, yeah, and it, again, is reminding me, you should probably start at the top. Thanks. So if I were to just randomly click on different scores, it's going to, again, keep a running tally on that progress panel as I'm kind of going along. So I could technically get to the bottom and save, even though I'm not completely done, knowing that I would have to go back and fill in the ones that have not been fully answered. And it would even tell me you only did 20% of that particular section and 80% of this section. So I could save and then go back to it, but for now I'm going to cancel. And the VI, I'm just going to, again, show you just the quick shot of it. Same progress panel. The only difference here is instead of the kind of 4 through 0 scores, it's mostly yeses and nos or certain numbers that you're asked to enter. And it's laid out exactly like the paperwork and exactly like it is in HIFIS 3 right now. So there's no changes that are here aside from it will present you right away with what their score is. You can, again, sort the columns from however you want. If this list has a ton of, 1,000 different assessments in here, you can go into that filter items field and search for the client that you are specifically looking for and either edit their existing SPDAT or just view it or get rid of it because maybe, oops, you made it for the wrong person. Questions about that? No? Excellent. I'm going to briefly kind of go over case management. Now, I know that many of you use other tools for your specific case management, like CRMS, but or not. Okay, well, there are some agencies that use CRMS for case management, so I need to at least kind of preface the whole thing by saying, the case management tool is here should you wish to use it. The city does not require that you use it. It is on an agency by agency basis to decide if this is something you would like to kind of explore. So this particular list, when you get here, it's going to show all the people who have cases. And again, you can decide through those filter options, do you want to see people only who have open cases or who have a specific goal in mind or whatnot. And if you've entered a target date, for example, like if you determined, the client would like to find housing by the beginning of February or something, it gives you a little quick warning up here about that there's 6 people who are past their target date. So it would be a quick way for you to kind of connect with those particular clients and follow up with them. Does this message pop up on all screens? Yes, but that's only because we're the same. Did you broadcast message? Notice I'm looking at you.
I don't know why you always keep looking at
Yeah, I don't know why.
I was like, should I not be looking at you?
No, that was my question. Will it pop up on all the screens if I do it?
Yes, if it's a broadcast message, yes. Excellent. So the one thing that I will at least clarify about the whole way that the case management tool is structured is it's one case for one goal for a client. So you might see in here, for example, that this one client technically has multiple cases in here with different goals. Again, this particular module was created by people who don't necessarily have that kind of frontline shelter experience in terms of, you're not going to have a different case. I'm not going to have one case for the same client that Wendy does because she's working on a housing application and I'm working on getting them ID. Like when a client presents to you and you're their caseworker, you're working on all of the things that they need at the time. It's, very multifaceted. So at least our family shelter staff, who are the ones who are currently using the HIFIS case management module, they've found it helpful just to kind of use general as kind of a goal because everything kind of fits under there. So if you kind of also think of, you're not going to open a case for every time you meet with a client, you kind of have one case for the whole time that they're staying there, that you're working with them. And then anything else would kind of be a session, kind of almost like a piece of paper thrown in the case. So if I needed to make a new case, then I'd add the person. And if they are a member of a family, it would give me the option to, hold on, I'm going to change. If they're a member of a family, it will give you the option to include the names of the other family members, which I think is always a good idea to do because even if you're working with, a mom who has 4 kids and you'll mostly be working with the mom, there's a good chance that the goals will impact the rest of the family. So it's a good idea to at least put the other family member names in there too. So when you're, again, entering those information or adding a new case, you're filling out the mandatory fields. The status for a case is either open, closed successfully, or closed, goals not met, like maybe they just disappeared off the face of the earth, or perhaps your agency has a specific time limit that we only work for them if we haven't seen them for 2 months, then we would close their file, whatever. It allows you to enter a target date in there. And the last 2 ones in terms of a per diem program or contributing factors, you don't have to enter anything in there. It's not going to change the actual service that you're providing. So after I've clicked save, again, brings you to kind of the client profile page like we're used to seeing, and this particular version is based on case management. So you'll see that there's some different tabs up here. I can edit that case completely, but anytime I meet with the client, I would add that actually as a separate session. So this session, it's going to default to that one goal that you picked. If a client does have multiple goals, you would be able to go and pick an activity or a session related to that one specific goal. And the activity, this, again, demo database has all kinds of random things in here. Our live one has specific activities that we think, you actually do with your clients, whether it's, intake or community plan or housing application or just client contact, or if there's ones that we would like in the list that don't appear in the list, then let us know and we're happy to add them. The date and time that you met with them. And you can also go and add the time that you spent with a client for this particular session, and which caseworker was actually present. And there's an option here for, it says responsibility, and it gives you the option for either caseworker or client. And what that really means is it's about if there's a follow-up. So if at the end of the session, the client is supposed to come back to you because they need to give you a copy of their, their SIN card, then that responsibility falls. So kind of the follow-up item is really the client's responsibility. If you are supposed to get them referral information or make a call for them, then that would be the caseworker. You can also indicate if you've involved any other agencies and if the client and or other family members were present. And although it might seem weird to say, like, why would I even create a session if the client wasn't present? Most of the times you are going to say that, yes, the client was present. But if for whatever reason if you have a contact with, their OW worker or with the CMHA worker or whatnot, if you want to record some information that's pertinent to their case management record, you could go and enter that in here if you would like. And then I would do that. So if they had all kinds of different sessions in here, I could go and view session details. That would kind of break down all of the times that they've met. Deanna, there's a web question
from Chemical Y. She's saying instead of the plus and manually adding names for the full family, could they not pop up and allow us to click the button beside each name? So I guess
there is that option.
There is that
yeah. Option. If they're part of a family, it would pop up. No. I'm going to have to get back to you about that as well. Kim, you have some tricky questions. Good job, Kim. For some reason, I was going to say I thought that there was an option where you could select all family members all at one time, and I may be misremembering. So I will clarify that with you.
Mike found it.
Mike?
Go to front desk.
Okay, Mike found it. Front desk.
You don't have it either. I don't have it, but he has it here. Block operations.
Because you sign in as admin, not admin Ottawa. Okay. And we won't have access to the block operations option. But there you go. Lots of reasons. No, it would be super not handy because with one button you could book out every single person in the shelter, and then there's no way to book them all back in when you realize it's a mistake.
Well, you do it one by one.
One by one, which has happened in the past. Would you like to do that for your 228 people? Because I guarantee that they will leave it all for you.
For all of us,
yeah.
you would like it'll save a lot of time every day, and if we mess up like once
we still come out ahead.
Do we?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's like it. That is something actually for possible discussion. The issue with that, if block booking people out for the web people, there is an option technically within HIFIS, even in HIFIS 3, to block book people out. So with the click of one button, you're essentially discharging every single person who is currently in a bed in your shelter or in the active service provider that you have selected. The danger of that is that if you did not mean to click on that button, or that's not part of your regular operations, you could, for example, many, many years ago, the Salvation Army accidentally did that and booked out 168 people all in one time. And they had to manually, one by one, re-enter 168 people. So we turned that function off. If you do operate as a, just only overnight, people only stay here one night at a time, then yes, that would be appropriate. And in that particular case, we could kind of enable that block operations thing. If there was a fire, that kind of thing would be helpful to go and say, we need to get everybody out of the building. Boom, here's one button, easy peasy. But doing the block operations, like even on a daily basis, if somebody is coming back, that's still technically one stay. So if somebody stayed there, 29 out of 30 days, we want to make sure that it shows that they stayed there one stay of 29 days and not 29 stays, because again, that will impact different stats and recidivism rates, et cetera, et cetera.
His context is the chapel mats. We book them every day.
Yes.
So you unselect all the other ones.
Yes.
20 selected, block book out 20, because we do that every morning. It takes about an hour.
You could make that as a separate shelter and do it.
Yeah, those are over. Yeah, because you can, when you do
for the web people, the mission is saying that as part of one of their main men's shelter hostel program, they have their main permanent beds, but then they also have a block of 20 mats that they regularly use every night, but they regularly discharge them every morning. So, they can't just only block book out 20 beds of one shelter. So I was suggesting that perhaps they would consider changing those mats into a separate shelter themselves. Then they could use the block operations by clicking the one button and everybody goes every day, if that's the case. So if that is something of interest, we can definitely talk about that. So yes, you make a note, we'll talk about that. All right. So other case management things to know, aside from you're creating a session. So anytime you're meeting with the client, you're not making a new case. Everything is kind of under like a session in this same one case. Just like in any other area that has documents, you can attach documents. It doesn't matter if it's a Word document, a PDF, a JPEG, any kind of document that you want, you could upload here. I think it not only would it be useful for copies of, identification, you could put, a copy of their housing application. You could put, letters of reference from whoever, different professional things. If you've had to provide the client with a letter because of some service restriction stuff, whatever, any document that you put here is also then going to kind of be available throughout the rest of HIFIS where there's documents stored. And this case comment section, is really, again, for comments that are kind of overarching for the whole case. So in each session, you'd be able to go and add comments or kind of a case note to each session. But this case comments is really supposed to be for, this is kind of when they, don't meet with that person in room 4 because like they lose their mind at the number 4. Number 4 is a terrible room for them to meet in because the walls are green and they hate the color green. They prefer yellow rooms. So only meet with them in a yellow room. So I'm making crazy, crazy things up. But if there is something that's very important to know that's outside of the goal for the case management, you would make a note in that case comment section. Otherwise, everything's just going to be in sessions and that main details tab, because I did create a session, it will start to kind of show you the elapsed time that you've spent with this client. So you will be able to print out a report if you've entered the time that you've spent, to show that, for example, maybe this client, it only took me like a total of 12 hours of work in total to finally get them housed. Whereas maybe there's another client or a family that it took, 73.5 hours to get them housed. Or maybe, is there any barrier? Is there other services that we need to offer? Are they sucking up more of your caseload time than other clients? Like if you need to kind of have a balanced load, you can at least kind of have a quick glance at the time that you're you're spending. Questions about that? Mm-hmm.
One question. So we say the document has, like, we would have to have it as a document.
Well, yes. So you would, I mean, you can, for example, like if you went to the registry website, you can see a copy, you can access a copy of their housing application online, but you would have to download it as a PDF. So as long as you store it somewhere local on your computer or anywhere that's accessible on your computer or on a USB key, wherever you want to, you or the client wants to store it, then you can upload it from there. So, but yes, it does need to be sourced on your end. For sure. Okay. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna talk about, 3 other things on here really quickly. There is it actually exists in HIFIS 3. There's a housing placement section, and I'm gonna guess that most of you have probably not used it. It's like Chris especially. She uses housing placements all the time, right? Yes, no. So housing placements is a section I would just like to provide a little bit more information because it's very much tied to case management, but it's, you know, very goal specific. And especially if you're working in kind of this housing first world that we seem to be moving in further and further, it can kind of give you some more context for the work that we're doing and demonstrating the work that we're doing with clients. So housing placement list, similarly to the case management list, it's going to give you little pop-up warnings about, you know, if somebody has an upcoming follow-up or it's past due, or if they're past their target date, or if they're past their expected move-in date. You can filter if you want to see just the most recent people or all of the people. And again, you can search in that filter items field for any particular client, and it will automatically default to sorting the clients alphabetically, but you can decide that I only want to search by status or whichever other column that you want. So you'll notice as well that one of the columns is housing type sought, and again, a client can decide which types of housing that they're comfortable looking for. Some people only pick one, and some people, this person has picked 32 different options of housing. Sometimes it's based completely on the client's desires, and sometimes it needs to be a compromise of your agency's expectations. So you might say that, you know, for example, our family shelter folks kind of have them like, you will, if you're applying for subsidized housing, you need to take kind of the first offer. That, you know, you can't just wait for home ownership because that's just not going to happen. Or, you know, you can't just decide I'm a shelter person now, that's who I am, and I'm gonna live in a shelter till I'm 98, and you know, whichever, which that's cool for some people, but that's not gonna happen here. So if you were to add a new housing placement, and again, you find a client that you want to work with, then if they are part of a family, for the family sector folks out there in webland, you would be able to technically go and select all family members. So the plus and minus actually on any HIFIS page isn't necessarily add another option. It's select all or select none. So if this person had 7 family members, I'm losing my voice, attached to their file, then you could go and select with one button all 7 family members. So housing type sought, it is, again, you can pick multiple options. You can enter a target date if you want, not necessary. It's asking for, again, that per diem program attachment, which is not mandatory, and I can't understand any reason why you would enter information in there. Doesn't make sense. So after you have started the placement, again, brings you back to that client profile with, now we're on the housing placement details screen. So the information you're going to see in the top section is going to change depending on the status of their housing search. So right now, because this client just started their housing search, the status is housing not secured. So there's really 3 options: housing not secured, housing secured, and moved in. Makes sense. So depending on if their status was secured or moved in, you'd see more information kind of in this, what would be blank chunk here, showing you about like when they're supposed to be moving in, information about their unit and whatnot. Any of their statuses that they have will have kind of these tabs down below about housing attempts or attaching documents. So like in any other document section, you upload one here, it's available in other places. In this attempts option, so if, for example, your client is looking for places, they're, waiting for subsidized housing, but they're also looking, you can technically go and add, if they went and looked at a place, you can add that as a housing placement attempt. They might not have, it might not have been a good fit, or maybe they didn't like it, or, something didn't, they didn't secure it for whatever reason, but you can at least go and attempt, or at least indicate that they were making efforts towards their housing search. The other thing, if I were to go, actually, I need to make a comment about this new housing search, is not for you. So there is the capacity within HIFIS 4 right now to, like, if the registry wanted to get on the HIFIS bandwagon, we could technically list every single one of their units, like their whole stock. It would have, how many buildings, how many apartments, what the rent is, the locations, how they are maintained, all kinds of different things. But we will not have that as part of our live database. So if you were to go and say, let's do a new housing search, there is no stock listed in our existing database for you to search from. So cool story. So it would be great. And I actually would love down the road for us to somehow amalgamate, because then I could actually look at all of our different housing efforts that we as a, coordinated community have kind of put together and say, hey, look, there actually is a place available, or that's coming up, or that's within their price range that they could check out. How cool is that? But sadly, that will not exist. Sad.
Will we use the landlord's kind of
you can
drop down?
Yeah. So the whole new housing search, or different search depending on where they're at, it looks at internal options. But so what you will do instead is, when they find a place that's obviously not a unit within HIFIS, you're going to add and secure a housing unit, and this is where you go and enter all that information. So what type of housing is it? It does ask you for kind of what the status is, what the, I guess, condition of the place. Is it in need of repair? Is it fair? Is it good? Is it whatever? The place name is really supposed to be like, if it's the name of a building or a specific transitional program, they're moving into Options Bytown or Daybreak or whatever, you'd put the name. Otherwise, you're really putting just the basic address. There is a city called Badger in Newfoundland. I did not know this. And look at that. And I will put when their expected move-in date is. And there is a save and secure button at the bottom. So when I go back to this housing placement details page, it now has changed their status to housing secured, and it gives me some information about that unit that they're hopefully moving into down below. So I can, if I want to go and enter information about the rent or the whatever, again, I can edit the placement details. No, I can't. That is the wrong thing. Don't listen to me. Like, I would change that in the move-in section. Sorry, yes. So yes, when they finally get to the point where they are moving in, then you would go and click on the move-in button, and here is where you could technically go and put, the rent is this much a month, and they moved in here. Here's their contact information where we can reach them. If it's part of your service to do follow-ups after a client has moved out to help them transition into their own place, you can either have a specific date that you're following up with them, or you can just say it needs to be in like 3 months or whatever it is that you do. So it will have that information here. Yay, they've moved into housing. So you could go ahead and if you wanted to, or if it's part of your services, now there are 2 extra tabs in terms of follow-ups or subsidies. So anytime you connect with the client, whether that's in person or by phone or email, whatever it is, you can kind of see, are they still in their housing? How are they doing? What's happening with that person? Or you can also, really, it doesn't impact the city, but if it is useful to you, you could go and enter if they have received a housing allowance or a rent subsidy as part of their housing. So you could go and at least document that they have received that. And I think that's all I have to say really quickly. I'm recognizing the time right now. So is there questions about housing placement? All of that to kind of say that we recognize that not many people have had a chance to kind of explore this. And we really, really would love to hear any feedback about, is this something we think that could work for clients? Do we see any benefit to it? Is there anything that needs to be changed? Is it all a bunch of hooey? I don't think it's hooey, because this at least will clearly document like the amount of time that it takes from one client to kind of get from, shelter to whatever type of housing that it is, all their different kind of flows through our housing continuum. If you do any reporting, whether it's for, HPS funding or Housing First or CHIPPY for provincial stats, anything, there's always, an ask about kind of demonstrating the work that we are doing and kind of proving the work that we're doing for housing. So this is just really a tool for you to be able to use. So that's all I have to say about that one. The rest of the stuff in here, actually, I'm only going to quickly view service restrictions. So if you do need to bar somebody, I hate that word now, this list will default to either viewing all of the service restriction records or just the current ones that happen now. Again, same thing, you can filter it for a particular period of time that you need, or the filter items, you can search for a specific client if you know who you're looking for. So you'll notice on here in the chart that if somebody has been asked to leave more than one place, it will show you however many service providers that they have been restricted from. And if you kind of click on the arrow, it will tell you quickly all of the places that they are not allowed to access. But the other thing that it has is which modules. So we know that most places, if you have to ask a client to leave for whatever reason, it's usually that they can't stay there, they can't come at all. But there might be instances where they might not be able to stay, but you're still going to be able to provide them with food bank items, or they can still come for case management meetings, or you'll still meet them in the community for whatever services. So you can go and, drill down to which services out of all the ones that you potentially provide that they're not able to access. So for the existing ones, if you want to just see details or edit them, you can do that there. Aside from that, creating a new service restriction, just like in HIFIS 3, I'm really scrolling super quick. It's the same information in terms of what's the client name, the start and end dates for the restriction, which particular service providers it impacts. Notice that if you will only be able to go and enter the ones that you have rights to. So, because I only have user rights for these 3 particular shelters, I can't go and, restrict somebody from other shelters that I don't work at. So at least know that it will still maintain kind of an in-house thing. And in this comment section, this is where you would kind of put details of, they tried to stab me in the face, or, they set my car on fire, something. Hopefully none of these things have happened. And then you would save that. Or maybe they have. I'm not saying. And the last thing, at least at the front desk chunk, is the turnaways or diversions. Just like all the other areas, you can filter the period of time. You can find a particular client. The only difference here is for anyone who's used HIFIS 3 already, you'll know that the very top client in like the reception list is kind of anonymous, anonymous, like a built-in anonymous client. So we won't have that built-in anonymous client anymore because we really only used it for turnaways. So now there's technically two options. You can add a turn away, which, you know, for a client that actually exists, or if you don't know the name of the person, it's now an option to select an anonymous turn away. In which case, if you don't have their name, whether it's a diversion by the phone, in person, whatever, it gives you the options to kind of, you know, get a little bit more granular about the client that you have not served, actually. So are they presumed Aboriginal, Indigenous? Do they have an observed disability? Are they a youth, an adult, a senior? Their gender, their perceived gender. And again, the date and time of that particular interaction. And you can also say how many adults and children. So this is especially important for our family shelter folks who will often receive calls on the phone, and it's really, it's 3 adults and their 8 kids. So you'll want to be able to make a note that it's really 11 people that you had to turn away, not really just one. The reason that for turn away, and again, it could be a diversion. So the real difference, people, because we have diversion workers at certain shelters, we have, diversion work that is being done, and a diversion is a turn away. It's just, a temporary turn away that, you might have, they may not be coming into the shelter tonight because they're able to stay with their grandmother for 3 nights, but you know that they're going to come back on Monday because that's the longest they can stay. So we would still track that, and in our live version, the reason for turn away, you're going to have a lot of different options. It might be that, there's no free beds, or, physical disability or whatever, but there's going to be a lot of diversion, has own housing, or diversion, return to city of origin, or different diversion-y options. So you'll know that they're there. If you've referred them to a certain place, and again, if there's comments about, I asked them to call back at curfew, or they said that they were staying with whoever, blah, 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 and you would save that. And again, you can view records, you can edit them, you can delete them. And that's all I'm going to touch technically in the front desk, unless there is any hankerings for going back to another section. Deanna will tell me with a 15-second delay. Okay, so let's talk about reports. Let's not talk about reports. So picture it, Sicily, 1942. No. So in HIFIS 3, as it stands, we have 2 different areas where there are reports. So we have kind of the built-in report section. You'll often hear me call them the canned reports that ESDC has built. I think there's, like 88 different reports in the built-in report section. A lot of them, it's just the same report, but it's like bed list, sorted by name, sorted by bed, sorted by whatever. And then we have some of the tools and reports, mostly for billing and occupancy, that are in HIFIS Plus. So we're not going to have a HIFIS Plus and a separate report section. It's all going to be one smooshy deliciousness. And the reports will be configured differently. So you'll see right now, for example, that there's a list of different reports. All of these reports are actually, they're done in a new type of software called Crystal Reports, which might not mean anything to you, and maybe it totally does. But what that means is that ESDC has kind of opened up the ability to kind of create more custom reports to communities. So for example, Steve and I have taken Crystal Reports training. We have the appropriate software. So we could technically go, if someone requests a report that, wants to list all the people with brown eyes, and, they have size 6 shoes, and they only speak Spanish, and they came from Jamaica, whatever. You could make a list of very specific things that we would be able to kind of create a report for you, as opposed to our current process, which if someone requests a custom report, we would need to request that from ESDC. They would need to kind of take a look at all the different communities that are using it across Canada and decide if it's relevant enough to go ahead with that. Lots of times it's not, or lots of times they will follow through, but it might take months and months and months. So Steve and I will be able to kind of speed up that process. But it's really important to know that at the beginning, when we go live on the 21st, you're not going to have 88 reports, and you're not going to actually have every single one of these reports in here. We're sticking with kind of the essentials. We've asked shelters for feedback so far about, if you had to like pick the absolute bare bones that you cannot function without. What are they going to be? And obviously, bed list, billing report, occupancy report, those kind of things. We know that, you know, there's case management reports that people want. We know that there's different stats reports that people want, but we know that that's going to be like a day 3 thing, not a day 1 thing, if that makes sense. That being said, if there are certain reports that are in there that you feel are like you cannot live without from day 1, then we need to hear about that immediately. So make sure that you email Steve and I and Deanna and Kale to let us know what report or what pieces that you need to be able to report on, and you know, when you hope to kind of get it done. But know that we will continue to obviously update reports as often as we can and customize them for our community as best as we can. But we are only, you're going to go in here when we go live and you're going to be like, there's 5 reports to start with. And I'm saying, yes, there's only going to be like 5 reports, and we're going to have to love 5 reports, knowing that it will be 6 reports the next week or 17 the next week or something. But that will come over time. The other benefit as well is that if you, anybody in the community, or anybody that you happen to know out in the universe, knows Crystal Reports, has experience with programming in Crystal Reports, or you are aware of another community, you can go and create your own Crystal Report, and you can upload it and use it in HIFIS yourself. So if you're a big nerdy programmer person, fill your boots. I will give you a trophy, and it will be a legit trophy with your legit name on it, except yours will be spelled correctly, Kurt.
Are reports from Crystal Reports, this is a web question for Melissa, are they able to be pulled in CSV?
Yes. So any of the reports here, you'll be able to save as a, you know, .csv or an Excel file, as well as not just display it, so that way you can kind of put it in an Excel file so you can kind of format it and do whatever it is that you need for it. So these tabs that are on this report manager's page in terms of custom reports and add a report, most people, unless if you happen to tell me like, oh yeah, we have an IT dude or IT dudess or a whoever at our agency or a friend that I know who's really good with Crystal Reports, we want to add some, we'll leave that on for you. But most folks, I anticipate we're going to have the custom reports and the adding reports functions disabled, because we don't expect you to spend all your time writing reports. We expect you're going to be actually doing your actual jobs. But that being said, again, we actually have any of the other communities who are using HIFIS all across Canada. Some people have actually specifically subcontracted Crystal Report programmers to make reports for them, in which case if they have spent a lot of money on them, they are not always willing to kind of share things for free. But there are many communities who are very openly saying, we created these reports, it might be helpful to you, so here you go. So a lot of these reports that are actually in this demo site, which again, you can access from home on the weekend, because I know you totally want to, you might notice that, wait a minute, this doesn't seem like it would apply to our community, or that's not kind of a thing that we do here. And that's probably because it was created by another community that operates slightly differently. But to run any of the reports, it really is just as simple as clicking that little run icon next to it, and it will ask you for different report manager or report parameters, and you would run it, and again, in Crystal Reports. I'm not going to go through all of the reports because there's so many, because if I start one, then someone's going to ask me to run another one and another one. So I'm cutting everybody off. But please play with reports. Please let me know if there's, you know, even formatting that you want. So, you know, for example, Deanna and I, because we often look at the billing that is submitted on our end after it's submitted every month, we think that it would be helpful for, you know, maybe for there to be ID, or to make sure all the family members are actually listed together, or that it, yeah, it's like there's a few different requests. So if there's anything big or small that you're like, I would really like a report that does this instead of this, send us your wishes. I promise we won't totally ignore them. Okay, the last thing that I want to touch on here is back to this kind of help drop-down menu. this help center, much like kind of Microsoft Word. Deanna has a question.
Follow up to the CSV Excel. Can you show how that's done?
I can try. I cannot guarantee that the actual one that I am selecting will have that option, but let's take a little look-see. Okay. Thinking about it. So if you're able to kind of see the report of, right now I picked just the who is booked in at any particular agency. This is kind of what it pops up with right now, at least this particular report. And the toolbar at the top of this report generator screen gives you the option to print. It gives you the option to export. So that's where you would do that in Excel. You can find a specific record. You can go to different pages. And it asks you what format that you want it in. So do you want to save it as a PDF? Do you want it Excel? Do you want it Microsoft Word? There's lots of different formats that you can save a particular report in if you want to kind of muck around with how it's laid out. So that is that. In this help one, so if I get hit by a bus and I do not get to send you my lovely 50-page document, which I know you're all anticipating with glee, you can go and kind of find information about all these, the main modules here in this help section. There's also a glossary. So if you want to see how HIFIS specifically defines a particular field or a particular word, you can do that. This field dictionary, the difference between that and the glossary is the field dictionary is a list of all the drop-down menus in HIFIS. So again, we can add to them and edit them or remove them as we need. But just if you want to see how HIFIS defines something specifically, again, that's where you would find it. And the favorite thing here is there is a training center option. So I saved this for last because you'd be like, why am I even here? What's the point? There is a training center option. So as a technical, now that you are a trainer and you have all of the wisdom and the awesomeness, and we need you to kind of make sure your staff have completed some sort of training. So it's not my place to say what the exact process is that you have all the rest of your staff trained. You can sit down with them and kind of go over an abbreviated version of what we're doing this morning. You can hand them the document and say, read it, let me know when you're done. Cool. We are also going to be developing kind of almost an online knowledge test kind of thing, but that's not going to be ready for like tomorrow. You can also have them kind of go through these interactive training center modules that ESDC has developed. There's a few parts where, you know, they haven't fully finished developing it. Like it'll say, like, click here to see a demonstration of blah, blah, blah. And they haven't added that actual demonstration video yet. But you can at least have people kind of go through that, you know, the basics and whatever. And there's different actual activities. So you can have people kind of go through that, or you can view it yourself to see if there's any weird things. It's not quite as straightforward, oddly enough, as a 50-page huge monster that you'll be getting. But you can always have people choose this as an option to kind of train themselves. And again, you can do it in little bits. But this aside, moving forward, what I know Deanna was talking about what's going to happen when we are doing the conversion is on November 20th, probably after your morning shift change at some point, we're going to kind of take HIFIS 3 completely offline. We have to do a data conversion, which can take up to 24 solid hours to actually convert the data from HIFIS 3 to HIFIS 4. Then we're going to have to kind of go in there and confirm all of the user accounts and make sure everybody has, you know, their active user accounts and everybody's temporary password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to put it back online. We can't commit to a time in terms of, like, I can't tell you if it's going to be 9 o'clock in the morning, if it's going to be 2 p.m. in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, whatever. We're going to try our best to make it obviously sooner rather than later, but people will have to definitely use papers, intake forms, or track things paper-wise, old school, for at least 24 hours. And I think most people have expressed that they're, you know, not necessarily concerned about, you know, the up to, it's the what happens afterwards. And you will have continual support, like Steve and I and Deanna and Kale. We're going to be around incessantly for any questions, any emails you have, any weird glitches that are happening. We know that, especially when you're used to a system operating a certain way and there's changes, some people are very easily able to adapt. Some people, it takes a little bit more time. So we want to make sure that we're kind of noting the differences. Like, there might be something that's just, it's going to take you time to get used to how things are in a new system versus, oh my God, there's like a big error that we need to get fixed immediately. So we want to make sure that we're getting lots of feedback. We also understand that, by going live on the 21st, it's only 9 days until it's time for people to submit billing and whatever. So we will be suggesting that people run even like a, temporary almost billing report on the 20th before we kind of shut down. So you at least kind of have some numbers to kind of compare to before we put everything back live on the 21st. If you need any assistance with kind of back entering, we're happy to come and help you do that. Just let us know. And really, you guys or whoever it is that your agency is designating will be kind of the point people for the rest of your staff. And when you can't answer a question, you will come to us, mostly Steve and I, make sure you're sending it to us both. And if we can't answer it, because there might be some things that we don't know right away, then we will find an answer and with ESDC and get back to you. We're hoping 24 to 48 hours at the absolute max. The good thing about creating accounts is, like I said, Steve and I will still maintain doing that. We'll still be taking care of database maintenance and whatnot. But right now, with HIFIS 3, if somebody needs to get a new, Citrix account and get a new key fob, it sometimes has taken like 2 or 3 weeks, depending on our IT security's quickness. And we won't have to do that anymore. So it's just Steve and I, so we'll be able to at least create new accounts much more quickly. So I think that the best way to learn is really just by using it. So, however confident you're feeling now, I am confident in your confidence after you continue to use it regularly. Keep me posted. Is there any questions or any other last things you want me to hit before we run away for the day? No? Awesome. All right. We're done. Hooray. Thank you all for joining us this fine morning. 4 minutes early. Woot woot. Yay. 4 minutes. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we will send this document. I don't actually know if we're going to email it or if we're going to post it in like here's like a, Dropbox and come and download it yourself or whatever. But you will get that by the end of the day.
Email it to me, please.
Yes. You want me to plug?
Sure, later.
Oh. Like courier.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like for email though, it's going to be like clogging your email up with like a 6 meg file. Excellent.
Bring it on.
All right. 6 gig file.
Yeah, I was gonna
I
say.
was like, meg, I was like, whatever. That's like.
You should let the internet people not know that we're all done here and put on like.
We are on YouTube.
It is. This is what it looks like.
Yeah, we should just.
That's what we were typing away at the back when we were like moderating.